Even at 6 to 8 listings, I realized I had no freedom at all because I wanted to treat my guests as God, but also it was taking away from everything that I thought I would want.
All right, guys, everybody, welcome back to the Freedom Blueprint. I'm Adrienne Green, and today we're here with Akshay Bajaj. Here, we focus on how real estate entrepreneurs break free of the grind and create the freedom that they wanted at the start. And Akshay is a great example, and he's made a tool to help everybody else do that as well. So I'm really excited here. Akshay, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Adrienne.
And before we get into like the really cool tech stuff, can you start by giving listeners a quick picture of your real estate background? Because you're not just a tech founder, you're an investor yourself.
Yes, that's how actually I started. I was in tech building AI for more than 10 years for robotic systems, not for real estate at all. But while I was doing that, I also started my own Airbnb because my own journey, I found that freedom is the most important thing to me, right? And the first way I could actually start comprehending how to get freedom was financial freedom, right? And so I started investing in real estate, living in Las Vegas, the hospitality mecca of the world. Thought it'd be great. And actually it went as planned, 92% occupancy and more. I keep increasing prices. Things are going good. And then I scaled up to quite a few listings to actually get my freedom back. And that's how I have experience, because when you start as a new Airbnb or a short-term rental owner, it's deceptively taxing. We don't realize how many small things goes into not just the day-to-day, but also the setup of the listings and finding the listings, right? So I found all of that myself, learned the hard way. Also, just a background, my dad, although being a doctor, has been in real estate for his life. He's a developer, and as growing as a kid, I helped him out a lot with his real estate business, right? So I know how entire thing is built and all the small things that goes into a property. And I'm a big believer of there's a difference between a house and a home, and making every house home, and of course, all the other things that goes with it.
And I think we'll get into a lot of it as we go through here. Guys, I had the pleasure of actually meeting and speaking with Akshay last week. So I know he's got a lot that he thinks about, kind of like me. I think you think about every piece of the puzzle. It all fits together nicely. But if we get back to, I think, the cool thing you developed here, you in your W-2 job working for someone else, you were working on this software for self-driving cars, for aircraft autopilot, and you applied it to vacation rentals. But as a vacation rental or short-term rental owner, what were you seeing on the operations side that made you think this is the same problem I've been solving on the tech side? I could solve it here in the short-term rental side.
Absolutely. And I actually gave a talk at UNLV, which is the title of the talk was kind of the same, which is, are we living inside a robot? Right? So fun fact, we still have not come up with a perfect definition of robot that everyone agrees on. Right? And in a way, the way we say a robot is it has actuators, which is motors, arms, legs, whatever, which we call. It has a brain and intelligence. And it also has a way to sense things, which is what we call the sensing unit, right? So I realized, okay, for my aircrafts, for example, self-driving cars, the things that we are controlling with the intelligence I'm creating are the final position of the wheels of a car, right? And a steering wheel. In this case, we have the same thing, but what we are changing, we are actually trying to manipulate or get control of is the people moving inside, right? Which is, when does a turnover happens? When does a guest come? What is it that we are telling the guest that will allow them to have an experience like we want them to have? Right? In our case, the intelligence was missing. There's no real estate which has any kind of inbuilt intelligence which allows to happen autonomously. We have workflows, which is what we tried, in our stack, that you have, hey, at this time do this time do this. But whenever you have anything which is a workflow based, you've lost the human touch. It's not organic anymore. It's not calibrated to you anymore, right? And that's what I've found, that, hey, in a way, it's the same problem, just the actuators are different. If I build an intelligence layer, which is control over the things, it would be great. And the other example of actuators would be the house temperature, the lock codes, the jacuzzi being on or off, the recommendations we give them, right? And that is how, when I thought about the problem like that, all of a sudden a new world opened up, which is what now has become HostEasy.
So HostEasy is this name of the SaaS system you built, right? For people who are familiar with SaaS, but I know you like to call it something else.
Yes, it's not SaaS, it's FaaS. Freedom as a service. We are not software as a service. Yeah.
Because you're really about, what you're providing people, and that is that freedom, right?
Exactly. Because that's what happened to me. Imagine, at one point I had about my own, about 12 listings, right? 8 to 12 4-1 release, 8 were like owned, and then I was controlling and managing about 38, right? Even at 6 to 8 listings, I realized I had no freedom at all because I wanted to treat my guests as God. That is what the saying is in India. Like, really want to give them great hospitality experience, want to be available for the 3 a.m. when they want to get in the jacuzzi
Right.
at night. But also, it was taking away from everything that I thought I would want, right? And that's when, like, I was like, no, I do not want to compromise on giving my guests an immaculate experience, but I also want to give up on having my own freedom back. How do I come up with a thing which allows for the both things? And that's why we call ourselves freedom as a service.
Love it. And that's such a common challenge in the short-term rental space, right? People do short-term rentals because they want the increased cash flow. So they've got financial freedom, but then they can find that if you self-manage so that you're getting that cash flow and you're actually getting the financial freedom, you don't necessarily have the time freedom, like what you're saying, because you now have to provide a lot of service, and that could be 24 hours a day, right? So you've came up with your Host Easy freedom as a service. That should help solve that problem, right? We can self-manage, so we keep that financial freedom, but it helps with a lot of the time pieces so that we can get the time freedom we're not often getting with self-managing. Is that a good
Yes.
summary? Am I understanding that right?
Yes, that's one part of it. We do take over all the operations. And when I say all the operations, I mean end to end. So 91% of the work is done by AI. But you just don't get an AI platform like any other PMS, right? First of all, it's a different PMS altogether, right? AI is literally doing the work for you, not following the orders in a way, right? But also you get a team of people 24/7 available for not just for the guest, but for you as well within 5 minutes, right? Taking care of the nuances whenever something goes wrong. So you really can be hands off if you want to. But the other thing is, because AI is so good at knowing a lot, like a data collection and doing what needs to do with the data, that the humans can process at the same tenacity that it does. So it also gives you the financial freedom in a way that sometimes listings are not going to make as much money, right? So Alfred also changes your strategy for pricing, for min stay, for everything like that, like a revenue manager does. And on top of that, it does gives you a prediction of what you are going to make in the future or not, right? So when you look at it, you really know whether this listing is the listing which is going to give you financial freedom or not, right? While it's managing it. And then it also takes over the operations to give you the time freedom, both of them just in a single package.
Okay, so walk us through what a well-automated short-term rental operation actually looks like day to day. So if somebody's using Host Easy, they've got your, Alfred, who's not a real human, but they've also do the VAs that are real humans on the back end. What's the AI handling? Like, what is Alfred the AI handling, and what's staying with a human?
Yes. So Alfred is really good at doing anything which is monotonous. It never sleeps, never forgets, right? So you don't have to need to create a property guide or SOPs or anything like that. Alfred already knows what are the best ways to like manage things. It learns everything from your listing. It actually analyzes every single photos and looks at every single amenities you have or you don't, right? When it does not know what to do, it asks you the questions during onboarding. So now it has a full lay of lands what's going on. It also talks to the cleaners, talks to the vendors, as well as your pricing. It's doing all of those things out there for you. The only thing which Alfred does not do is either something which is emergency. It will notify you of the emergency, but rather than that, it will also message the guest, de-escalate, but it will let you handle all the things that needs to be. It will give you a suggestion because we understand that's when the human touch is needed more. Any kind of nuances where it feels uncertain about the information does not have, it pings the team again or you again and be like, hey, I'm not sure if we have a baby crib. Before I reply, can you let me know? Can you confirm me? And either you can reply yourself and Alfred remembers, or you can tell Alfred, yeah, Alfred, we do have a baby crib. And boom, it remembers forever, right? So it's very accurate about knowing what it can do. But more than that, it really knows what it cannot do. And that's our goal. Ask before act. That's what it also always
And
does.
that's a really good point, Akshay, because I know when I use Hospitable on my properties, I've used it for like a year or two, and I loathe the like answer with AI. I have all their AI tools turned off because whenever I'm like, let's try the answer with AI to draft something, I'm like, nope. That's wrong. So I don't use it. I'll use the improve with AI function where it allows me to just write the facts and then it makes it sound pretty, but that's still very labor intensive for me or for my VA. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, you have to be on call. At 2 a.m., if you have to still improve, you are not hands off, right? That was my main problem with these tools as well, right?
Right. Especially when you have 38 doors you're managing, like you were saying you were, like you could just guarantee something's going to go wrong every few days with that many doors.
And that's why we architecturally built it entirely differently. So I've been building AI, like I said, more than a decade before AI was a thing. I know for sure how you can build an immaculately like cutting edge AI. It needs three things. For an AI to be Alfred, it always passes tuning test. Tuning test means you can't tell whether it's AI or human, right? And it's not by chance. The way it is, that AI can already be as good as it has access to three things. One, how much access to real time information it has about everything. That's why we built a unified platform where Alfred knows about the last cleaning that happened, the last maintenance that happens, access to log codes, access to knowledge base, listing info, everything. It knows everything about everything, and that's one thing in real time. The second thing is how good of a training you have done on that particular thing. That's why we have human in the loop. If you don't want it, it's trained on that already, right? So very industry centric, hospitality centric training on that. And then third is, okay, now it has all the intelligence, it has all the training, and it has all the access of what is going on. What it can do with that, which is integrations. And that's why Alfred has access to the door lock. When in our case, when a guest is logged out, it actually looks at the lock code. If it's not working, it unlocks the door, creates a new lock for them, and sends them the lock. This would just be impossible for any of the systems out there. Why? Because they're not unified like that. Right? It actually contacts the cleaner, a handyman, because it can call them and message them and be like, hey, can you please help out with that? Right? Based on your instructions you're given. Right? That is how like it becomes a very different experience altogether. Right? And that's why when you say Hospitable or other host buddy or companies like that, I look at them as more of a glorified quick replies. You have given, hey, for this situation, do this, do this, do this, and then AI is kind of doing improve, and sending it based on the last thing. That's I don't not scalable.
No, and that's where for listeners who have short-term rentals and maybe burned with the AI build-ins to these other platforms, because like you're saying, they just do the auto replies, or you set up, when somebody messages about early check-in, send this message, but then it always sends it when it's not appropriate, or other things as well. Yours is a totally different, much smarter system. Now, I want to know, Akshay, you said, if there's an emergency, something like that, it pings up. You also have an option within your program where somebody can have, the AI and a VA that's on your team, right? Who's helping with that person piece. What stays with the person piece?
Yes. So we have something called supervision mode, right? Which is if you want, you can turn on supervision for maybe guest messages or vendor messages, for end schedule messages, or any action that you wanted to do, right? Everything in full control. So if supervise is on, what happens is AI knows what I'm going to respond. It sends the message, but then waits for you, if you want to take that over, or our VA team, which comes with it, to accept or decline. Right? So now what happens is when you accept, then the message goes as you, not as AI, right? Or if you decline, you or the VA declines, they write it out and then go from there. So that is the idea behind VAs being in the loop. We call it human in the loop. The other thing on top of that is also actions. We don't just do messages. We also do day-to-day tasks, right? That's also our team of people who does that. We also have guest disputes. We also manage your guest disputes with Airbnb, with VRBO, because we have done it really more than 10,000 times now. So our a success rate is super high, right? And you just get all of that with like this one subscription, because to be honest, we don't have as much margins to give 20%, 25%, right? To like a property management. And now you get all of that work done as a flat fee model, right? Like you have a SaaS software.
So it sounds like, and I'm, if I'm missing pieces, fill it in here, Akshay, that with Host Easy, whether you have it all automated or you've got the human in the loop choice of supervision mode, you're handling all the day-to-day management of the property, right? Coordinating the cleaning, coordinating maybe, I don't know, like a handyman or something like that, or messaging guests, dealing with those disputes. I'm thinking of some of the other pieces that like I as a property manager would still have on my plate so that we clearly understand the value there. So like I would still have my team, like my personal property manager VA would still be coordinating like my twice yearly HVAC inspection, correct?
Yes. So like I said, there are certain actions, right? So the idea behind the actions is that one of the action you would set up is, hey, twice a year HVAC. Alfred will still trigger them, but you can assign that action to your VA. Okay. So it will automatically come to your VA's desktop, your property manager, hey, this action needs to be done like that, right? And that is what they would do. And that is how we go about it.
Awesome. So the nice thing that's being taken off the plate is that, like you're saying, like the revenue management, like optimizing the listing, handling all those guest messages, telling them, helping maybe problem solve how to use the Roku TVs. Am I the only one where like about once a month a guest is like, I don't know how to use the TV because they're maybe
Yes.
used to cable because they're over 60? Those are the kinds of things that
Yes. Also, we also help with, like I said, guest disputes on top of that. If anything happens, damage claims, coordinating with vendors. When there's a crisis, that is the only time we do not like take decisions on your behalf, which is how would you want to handle the crisis? And that's where either a property manager, you would be there 100%. We would still handle the back end work, like for example, communicating with guests, coordinating with the Airbnb support team. But you have to be the one actually calling the maintenance person, scheduling them up, and after schedule is happened and payment has happened, then we will continue the coordination.
If you're a real estate entrepreneur trying to scale while doing everything yourself, there's a better way. The Time and Freedom Starter Pack gives you the exact first steps to reclaim hours each week with real support, including what to hand off, where to start, and simple tools you can put into place right away. Download it for free at adriennegreen.com/starter pack. Now let's get back to the episode.
And what I love about this, because Akshay, I'm all about like leveraging with technology and a team. And what I love is when technology can help a team do a better job or go further faster. And so what I love is, hey, if somebody wants to work with like my company, Workogenics, and get a virtual assistant to be their property manager, they can then partner them with something like HostEasy. And then HostEasy can handle a lot of that day-to-day communication. The virtual assistant is able to handle the bigger things. Like right now, my VA is handling getting quotes on new HVACs. Guess what? HVACs, oceanfront houses in Myrtle Beach, they die in like 6 to 8 years. Ask me how I know. And so, but that's something that my VA property manager can handle better, faster, easier when the day-to-day guest messaging is off his plate with something like HostEasy.
And that is the thing, the nuances would always be there, to be honest, right? And one more thing that I would also see, what we have done is we want to make VA's life easier as well, right? Because what I realized was, hey, there would be days where everything across all the listings will go down all at once, right? And that is when the overwhelm happens, that is the bad reviews come in. And the way we have done it, we've created something called Playground, which helps its tool set. So rather than them finding, let's say, HVAC people manually, right? It can ask Alfred on Playground, hey, can you find me HVAC? And we'll give you a list of 5 to 10 people. Now they can call, coordinate, and do the same work way faster, way more accurately, right? Same goes for finding other, right? And then we have made inviting those people way faster. You can click on invite, put the information in, boom, coordinate fast, right? So that's all, like we're trying to streamline every single thing that personally I came across, right, as a property manager myself, to really streamline everything. And the other thing is also finding a good VA. That's a very important, big problem as well. And that's why we are now doing this partner, which is like you can find a VA very soon, literally on HostEasy, and it would only be the VAs who are vetted by us, highly certified, and are incredible at what they do. No need to train them. No need to actually teach them what needs to be done, what not. They already know everything. You just do a vibe check interview if you like, and boom, just like that, there you have a VA.
Right. Yes. Because if you talk to a few real estate investors, you're going to run into a VA fail. I feel like for every 5 investors you talk to, you're going to hear at least one VA fail. So as much as I'm passionate about helping investors lessen that, let's get that rate lower.
You would know already, right, how difficult it is to really know like one good VA from another, because it's the culture that they have to understand. It's a very intangibles, right? Other than the skills.
That's a very, very good point. Yes, there's a lot that goes into it. Now, thinking about the automation piece, I'm thinking about listeners here, and one of their fears often when we talk about automation, when we talk about AI, is the loss of guest experience, right? You've got, Hannah, the host, who thinks there's no way that Alfred, the AI, can provide the same experience that I can, and I'm going to lose my 5-star Airbnb rating if I use this system. So how do you think about protecting the human side of hospitality while the AI is handling this operational load?
And to be honest, Hannah could be correct, right? Absolutely. Because the way Hannah curates an experience might be very exclusive to her for her property, right? And that's why we say we give you full control. The way maybe Hannah loves the guest communication. She can turn off guest communication and Alfred handle everything else. The good thing is every time she's doing guest communication, Alfred on the background is always learning, right? It's learning how she talks. It's learning the communication style. It's learning what she said for what things. So if tomorrow when Hannah actually wants to go on a vacation and she turns it on, she still knows that Alfred is as in line as it can be than any other system out there. Or she can turn it on with a supervision mode. And in supervision, she can make herself the supervisor instead of our team. Right? Or if she does not want that either, she feels more trust, then she can make our team the supervisor. If she feels more trust, she can turn off supervision mode. So you can go through baby steps the way you want, your full control. And on top of that, your full transparency. Because everything is happening on this one system, so you can see what happened and what not. Right? And that's how like it becomes super beautiful.
You know, in that answer, even though we've spoken before, I learned something new about how your system works. And what resonated with me is, you know, what I always, as a former teacher, right, who's really with the virtual assistant world and whatever, it's like half of that is training the client, the employer, how to work with the VA. And one of my main frameworks is I do, we do, you do. And that's really what you're allowing to have happen with your system. I do is like, hey, Hannah turns it off and she is doing it. But at the same time, Alfred's monitoring and learning. And then there's we do with the supervision mode where Alfred's doing some things and she's supervising. And then there's you do where now she has trained Alfred and he can totally just run on his own. Like that is a standard like teaching model of how to hand off control, and you've built that into your system.
Absolutely. That's why we say we're not an automation platform. We're a symbiotic platform. Humans and AI together doing the work for you end-to-end 24/7. And also Hannah might not like numbers, let's be honest. So give Alfred the dynamic pricing, give Alfred the revenue management, right? Maybe the turnover. You can do that to Alfred, right? So that's the thing we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, what is hospitality? Hospitality is serving the people that who are our guests, right? That's the idea. I have my own idea of how I want to serve them, right? I should be. I don't want to take that away from you. And there's a thesis Host Easy is built on. We truly make like hosting vacations easy. Host easy. That's the idea.
And at what point, Akshay, in a portfolio, does it make sense to invest in a platform like Host Easy? Is this a tool for someone with 2 properties, 20, or 200?
So we don't look at it like how many properties. We look at how much freedom you want. We have hosts who just don't want to do anything, right? Now, the only option they have is 20% to 15% of the revenue to property manager and no transparency, no visibility, no control. Right? Because they do it their way. You can, rather than doing that, you can use Host Easy, full managed, and boom, there you go. Right? Or we have like property managers, 30, 50, 80 listings. They really need something like that. And they're running something we call Frankenstack, right? Because now you have Erno, right, for finding cleaners and paying them. Then you have Breezeway for ticketing for them. Then you have PMS for like channel management. You have the Price Lab for dynamic pricing. You have AutoHost for this. And then Notion, Google Docs, passwords, you got to do that. Training VAs, no. Everything under this one platform, right? And they love that idea about it because the moment you're more than 20 properties, it just makes sense. Okay, everything is here and Alfred is in the center. And I just have to tell Alfred will update everywhere. It's a different experience.
It's funny that you use that term Frankenstack because the very first place I ever heard the term tech stack was at a short-term rental conference. This guy goes up and he's like, I'm going to share my whole tech stack. And I was like, what's a tech stack? And then he's sharing all these tools he uses. And I was like, that's a lot. So like, that's how a lot of short-term rental operators are in the space. And it really is, it is a Frankenstack. And then they break. The ties talking to each other break and it stops working. Because one of them updates and then you've got to like redo the connection or, you know, I feel like any short-term rental person listening probably has some experience like that.
Yeah. And not even the connection. Forget about, okay, you have 10 logins. We can make do with that somehow, right? But imagine now all of a sudden your pool, you want to take off the listing. We don't do pool anymore because it's too much hassle, right? So where are you going to change that? Now you have to change it on HostBuddy quick replies. On Airbnb, remove the amenities. Then on property guides. Then on Notion, because that's what like your VAs are going to use, right? Then you need to change. You see, everywhere you have to keep doing that. And still you don't know something. If something is missed, your VA can say the other thing and something might be other. Your maintainers, like vendors, know different thing altogether. It does not scale like that. And here, because everything is one spot and you can just literally literally in our case, Alfred, we don't do pool anymore. Update everywhere. Updates the listing, updates the knowledge base, talks to when guest asks says the same thing, vendor asks says the same thing. All of that just goes like, and also pricing. Now it knows that is not one of the amenities you provide. It will also update the pricing based on that kind of comp set. And it becomes like
Love it.
super like that.
Now, I'm curious, Akshay, because obviously, you're on the ground in the short-term rental space. With this asset class of short-term rentals, what do you envision, between how it's being operated and run now, right? It's been a fast emerging space in general. I feel like this space has changed a lot since 2019, 2020. It really got pretty hot. We've had some markets up and downs, but the key question is short-term rentals, Akshay. What are you thinking 3 to 5 years down the road? What are we going to see the market and the operations ecosystem look like?
I believe the ecosystem is finally going to look like the way we always imagine it to be, which is the more human experience you can create, which is what we call high touch in hospitality, the more you are going to actually get the earnouts. That's the idea. So now it's not about automations. It's about how much human experience, how good of a custom curated experience you can create, how much tailored you can. And that's what we're going with Alfred, with Host Easy, right? Because it has full control over every single part of your house and your listing, we want to then allow it to create an experience for your guest, which is almost impossible for us to do on scale, right? And that is what I believe the ecosystem is going to move towards. And you're seeing that already. If you look at short-term rentals, there's some even $200,000, $300,000 properties which are making 10x and $5 million properties because it's an experience. It's a tent in the middle of nowhere which just looks like that, right? With some kind of guidebook, and it's a whole thing. That is how I see it actually becoming it. And one thing that I think a lot of people are not talking about, which we have to be very careful of, guys. Everyone who has a short-term rental, be very careful. Now, Airbnb, the biggest marketplace, also shows hotels. So now you are not isolated anymore. You are actually fighting with $50 per night prices. And what can you provide? It's a very specific kind of client that you're looking for, right? So to curate your property like that.
I think, we have to point out that the guy who's here with his AI forward solution thinks that the future of short-term rentals is high-touch, curated human experience. And that so much resonates with what I see across the board, where in all these different industries, we're seeing people craving that human interaction, right? As face-to-face, as real life as possible, so that we know it's not fake, so we know it's not AI, right? Like we can watch these videos and my kids are better than I am on, let's say, Instagram with being like, that's AI, that's AI. They can spot it, but it's so tricky now. And people are craving those real, authentic experiences that aren't contrived. And what I love is how you're using technology to really facilitate that human connection and that great human experience.
Yes, absolutely. I truly don't think you should use technology unless it's needed. Although I'm a technologist myself, I believe in experience first. That's all. We're the most human AI company. It was a very big deal as a new startup to take a stand that, hey, we are going to provide a human team as well. Because the whole point is why SaaS company owns a human, because we know humans are it reduces all your profit margins, all the scalability out there, right? But we are like, no, if you want to change the world, start by changing a house. We want to make a world which is more experience centric. Let's start from where we're going. And that's our whole idea. And if you can create a great experience, which is human connection, it will pay dividends. That's how I believe.
So Akshay, if people would like to connect with you or learn more about Host Easy, what's the best place for them to reach out?
Absolutely. You can go to our website, which is hosteasy, hosteasy.ai, right? And you can absolutely sign in and onboard your property by yourself. Alfred will actually help you onboard the properties because it learns everything about your listing the moment you add as a co-host, or you can set up a call. It says onboarding call, and we do all white glove onboarding end to end, with no extra cost. We don't charge for that. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'll shoot a LinkedIn link below. Happy to connect. Any ideas, let us know. We are always listening first, really trying to know what your pain points are and fixing it for good while maintaining that experience. That's our goal.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Akshay, for coming on and sharing about your experience as a short-term rental investor and how it prompted you to develop Host Easy and how you solved all the problems you had. I love it. And for our lovely listeners, that is a wrap on today's episode of the Freedom Blueprint. If you got value from this conversation and you know somebody who needs Host Easy, do me a favor, do Akshay a favor, and just send this episode over to them so they can take a listen or a watch. And then join me again next week for another episode of The Freedom Blueprint.